was 40 years old, standing on a competitive bodybuilding stage for the first time, dead last in every category, and I have never felt more alive. That night didn't teach me about bodybuilding. It taught me about the architecture of growth, the 7 stages every human being moves through when they commit to something that actually matters. In the gym, in their career, in life. Tonight, we walk through all 7, from the first spark that makes something feel possible, to the deep sense of purpose that makes you keep going long after the motivation has gone quiet. Whatever you are building right now, this is the framework underneath it. Welcome to Sleep and Rejuvenate. This is a sleep aid, but a different kind. If you found this, you're probably someone who takes their health seriously. Someone who trains, who tries to eat well, who pushes hard during the day, and then lies awake at night, mind still running, body still wired. I made this for you because I am you. My name is Sohi, a woman in my 50s, a natural bodybuilder with over 20 competitions, a corporate professional, a certified nutrition coach and personal trainer, a primary carer for my elderly parents, and for a solid, uninterrupted, thoroughly exhausting decade, a chronic insomniac. I know what it's like to be exhausted, but wide awake, to do everything right during the day, and then lose the night. This isn't a generic sleep meditation. There are enough of those. This is something different. In each episode, I bring you one idea from the world of training, nutrition, or mindset, backed by science, shaped by real experience, explained honestly by someone who spent years getting it wrong before getting it right. Find your position, the one you actually sleep in. Let the weight of the day begin to lift off your shoulders. Feel the surface beneath you taking your weight. You don't have to hold anything up right now, not tonight. Let your eyes close or let them soften toward the ceiling, whatever feels right. Take one deep breath in through the nose. Hold gently at the top. And release slowly through the mouth. There's nowhere to be, nothing to solve, just this moment. Let me take you back to a moment that changed everything for me. I was 40 years old. I'd just been told by a surgeon that my running career was over. A decade of marathons, of waking up at 5 in the morning, of training through all kinds of weather, finished. My knee was in bad shape. The doctor gave me a choice: surgery or stop running entirely. I chose to stop running, and I had absolutely no idea what came next. I walked into a gym for the first time in my life at 40 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to use the machines. I didn't know the terminology. I was surrounded by people who looked like they'd been training since their teens. It was intimidating in a way I hadn't felt since I was a new immigrant navigating a foreign country. But something happened. Someone told me about a television show, a TV program called This Time Next Year. The concept was simple. You make a pledge on camera. A year later, you come back and show whether you kept it. And I, completely swept up in a moment of what I can only describe as madness, pledged to become a bodybuilding champion. I had never competed. I didn't know what natural bodybuilding even meant yet. I had no idea that elite competitors spend years, sometimes a decade, building the kind of muscle mass needed to be competitive. I just said the words out loud, on camera, and the universe seemed to say, well, now you have to try. I came last, dead last, at that first show. Here's the thing, and this is what I want you to understand about inspiration. I wasn't crushed. I was lit up, standing on that stage, having actually done what I said I would do, having transformed my body in 12 months from a former runner to a bodybuilder on a competitive stage. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. possibility. That is what inspiration really is. It's not motivation. We'll talk about motivation next. Inspiration is the moment something feels possible that didn't feel possible before. It's the spark before the engine turns over. Now, here's an important distinction that most people get wrong. Inspiration doesn't have to come from within you. That's a myth. We talk about intrinsic motivation as if external sources of inspiration are somehow lesser or somehow cheating. They're not. The brain doesn't care where the signal comes from. It cares about the signal. I used to listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger speeches on repeat during my heavy sets, specifically the one where he describes visualizing himself holding the trophy, seeing it so clearly that it became inevitable. Now, I will never have Arnold's genetics, not in a million years. That's just biology, but something about hearing someone speak with that level of conviction about what they believed was possible for themselves. It did something to me. It gave me permission to believe in my own version of that. Social media gets a terrible reputation, and often rightly so, but there is a version of it that genuinely helps. When you follow people who are doing what you want to do, who are where you want to be, and you engage with their content, not to compare yourself, but to remind yourself that it's possible. That is inspiration used correctly. The key word is relatable. I never found much inspiration in watching genetic anomalies do things no ordinary person can replicate. But watching a 50-year-old competitor who works a full-time job, who travels for work, who has a family, and still gets to the stage, that lights something in me that the superhumans never could. Find your version of that. Find the person whose circumstances are close enough to yours that the gap between you and them feels bridgeable, not the gap between you and perfection, the gap between you and possible. One more thing about inspiration. It fades. That's not a flaw. That's just how it works. The initial spark can't sustain a decade of discipline. But the good news is that inspiration isn't a one-time event. You can return to it. You can recharge it deliberately. When I've fallen off track, and I have, more times than I can count, it's often going back to an old speech, an old video, a memory of how I felt on that stage that gets me moving again. Think of inspiration as fuel. You don't fill the tank once and expect it to last forever, you return to the pump. And now, let that idea settle gently into your mind. Inspiration, the spark, the moment something felt possible. Think of a time in your own life when you felt that, when something shifted, when you saw something, heard something, experienced something that made you believe. Hold that memory softly. Let it warm something in your chest. You don't need to do anything with it tonight. Just let it be there, like an ember. Breathe in and let that feeling of possibility travel with your breath deep into your body. Breathe out and let any doubt, any tension, anything you've been carrying drift out with the air. Inspiration is the spark. Inspiration lights the fire. Inspiration reminds me it is possible. Here's a question people ask me all the time. How do you stay motivated? And I always want to answer, I don't. Not always. Not every day. Not for 20 years of pre-dawn alarm clocks and meal prep containers and training sessions when every part of me wanted to stay in bed. The real answer is more interesting than motivation. But let's start with what motivation actually is, because most people misunderstand it. Motivation is what happens when inspiration becomes internal, when the external spark, the speech, the video, the person you admire, gets processed through your own experience, your own history, your own hunger, and becomes something that lives inside you, something you own. Inspiration is seeing someone lift a weight you couldn't imagine lifting. Motivation is putting your hands on the bar. For years, I worked in corporate environments where goal setting was a full-time discussion. Smart goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. I sat through more workshops on this framework than I care to remember. And honestly, I got very good at it. I became someone who could reverse engineer almost any outcome into a series of trackable milestones. But here's what the workshops never taught me. Goals don't work if you're chasing the wrong thing. When I first started competing, I had my eyes fixed on one thing: the trophy, the championship title. And because that was my goal, everything was filtered through one question: am I winning? And the answer, for years, was no. What I didn't understand, what took me years to learn, is that bodybuilding is about 60% genetics, maybe more. There are things competitors are born with that cannot be trained into existence. Muscle insertions, limb proportions, how your body responds to a calorie deficit, how you carry fat versus muscle. These things are inherited, and no amount of discipline or dedication changes the blueprint. The day I stopped trying to win and started trying to become the best version of my own body, everything changed. The goal shifted from external to internal, from comparison to personal progress. And now, in my 50s, the goal has shifted again. It's not about trophies. It's not even about physique, not primarily. It's about longevity, building a body and a mind that stays functional, strong, and independent well into old age, preserving muscle mass, which we know from research begins declining in our 30s and accelerates after 50 if we're not actively working against it, building resilience, physical and psychological, so that the second half of life doesn't just happen to me, but gets shaped by me. Here's something I want you to understand about motivation, though. It will die, not might. Will. Every person who has ever started a diet, a training program, a new habit, every single one hits a wall. There's a term for this in neuroscience: limbic friction. Limbic friction is the tension between the emotional brain and the logical brain. Your logical brain knows you should go to the gym. Your emotional brain wants to watch television. Your logical brain knows the meal prep is worth it. Your emotional brain is ordering delivery at 9 p.m. This isn't weakness. This is biology. The limbic system, the part of the brain that governs emotion, habit, and survival responses, is older and faster than the prefrontal cortex that handles planning and reason. The old brain wins a lot of battles it shouldn't. The way through limbic friction isn't willpower. Willpower is a depleting resource. The way through is commitment devices. For me, the most powerful commitment device I ever found was registering for a show, paying the entry fee, putting my name on the list. Because once I'd done that, the decision to train stopped being a daily negotiation. The negotiation was over. I'd already decided. All that remained was execution. Think about what that could look like in your own life. What decision, if made once and locked in, removes the daily negotiation? Sign up for the race. Book the appointment. Tell someone else what you're doing. Create a consequence that makes quitting more uncomfortable than continuing. Motivation is not a personality trait. It is a skill, and like all skills, it can be practiced, strengthened, and strategically supported. Feel the weight of the day behind you now. All the decisions, all the effort, they've been made. You don't need to solve anything tonight. Tonight, let your body remember what it's working toward. Let your muscles relax, knowing they'll be asked again tomorrow, and they'll be ready. Your breath finds its own rhythm now, slow, steady. Each exhale, a small release. Motivation is energy. Motivation is movement. Motivation carries me forward, even in sleep. I want to tell you about the most humbling period of my professional life. I had completed an MBA in France. I had built a career across Europe over 13 years. 13 years of relationships, expertise, reputation. I had become genuinely good at what I did. And then, for personal reasons, I moved to Australia. I arrived with a clear intention. I would find a senior role in my area of expertise. My international experience would speak for itself. I had the credentials, the track record, the skills. What I didn't have was local networks. And in Australia, as in many countries, local networks are everything. Month after month of applications, month after month of polite rejections, or worse, silence. Interviews that felt promising and went nowhere. The steady erosion of confidence that comes from being overlooked in a field where you know you are qualified. After several months of this, I made a decision that felt humbling at the time and wise in retrospect. I took a job as a sandwich hand at a local cafe. I'm not being metaphorical. I made sandwiches. I operated the coffee machine. I cleaned tables. And on my lunch break and in the evenings, I I studied for professional certifications in project management, a discipline adjacent to my expertise that had a clearer pathway to employment in the Australian market. It took time. It required a complete revision of what I thought I was, but gradually I built local credibility, local connections, and found my way back into the corporate world, eventually returning to my original area of expertise. Intention doesn't mean rigidity. Intention means knowing what you're trying to accomplish, deeply, genuinely knowing it, and being willing to take any road that leads there. In bodybuilding, I learned this lesson every single prep, every competition, preparation is different. The same training program that stripped fat beautifully one year does almost nothing the next. The meal plan that worked at 42 starts behaving differently at 48. The body is not a machine that produces consistent outputs from consistent inputs. It adapts, it learns, it develops workarounds. Early in my competing life, I was a meticulous tracker, calories in, calories out, weight recorded every morning. And when the numbers didn't match, when I was eating correctly and the scale wasn't moving the way the maths said it should, I would panic. I would feel like I was failing, like I was doing something wrong. What I eventually learned, and what the research actually supports, is that the body is far more complex than any equation we apply to it. Hormonal fluctuations, sleep quality, stress levels, water retention, all of these variables interact with diet and training in ways that don't show up in a simple calorie calculator. The skill is not perfect execution of a plan. The skill is reading feedback and adjusting. I also used to isolate myself during competition prep. No social events, no dinners, no exceptions, because I was afraid that one uncontrolled meal would derail everything. And in the early years, maybe it would have. I didn't have the knowledge to navigate it. But eventually, I learned to be flexible without losing intention. I learned to look at the week as a whole, not the day. To plan around a social event rather than avoid it. To bring my meal containers without embarrassment, and to find that almost no one cared. And the few who did were usually projecting their own relationship with food. When your intention is clear to the people around you, it becomes easier to maintain. You stop having to explain yourself at every dinner. They already know, and most most people who love you will make space for who you're becoming. You know what you're moving toward, even if the path isn't perfectly clear tonight. The direction is. Let your body rest now with that knowledge. Let your nervous system soften. You've been navigating all day. You can put the map down. The breath slows a little more, in and out, each cycle carrying you a little deeper toward rest. Intention is clarity. Intention is commitment. Intention guides my path. Discipline is the least glamorous word in this framework, and it's the most important. Here's what discipline is not. It's not waking up at 4 in the morning, feeling pumped and ready. It's not loving every training session. It's not finding meal prep exciting after month 3. Discipline is doing the thing when you don't want to. That's it. That's the whole definition. Over the last decade, I have competed in more than 20 natural bodybuilding shows. Industry experts estimate that over 90% of athletes who begin preparing for a show don't make it to the stage. Life happens. Motivation fades. The diet becomes unbearable. Injuries derail the plan. Work gets overwhelming. The balance tips and the prep falls. I have never not made it to the stage. Not once. I want to be clear about what that means and what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean I was perfect. It doesn't mean I never missed training sessions, never had weeks where the diet slipped, never wondered why I was doing it. I had all of those moments, multiple times per prep. But I always came back, and coming back, that is discipline. My best result was a second place at a natural bodybuilding show in my early 40s. I have never won a show, and I have made peace with that in a way that took years to arrive at, because what I have won is something more durable than a trophy. I have built a body and a practice that has kept me strong, healthy, and mentally resilient through my 40s and into my 50s. I have built a relationship with discomfort that means I don't run from hard things in other areas of my life either. Discipline, once built, transfers. Here's what I've noticed about how discipline actually develops. It doesn't start as discipline. It starts as decision. You decide to do the thing. You do it when you don't feel like repetition, something changes. The action stops requiring effort and starts requiring less. Not no effort, less. That reduction is the beginning of discipline. The neuroscience supports this. Repeated behaviors create neural pathways. The more you travel a pathway, the more myelinated it becomes, the faster and more efficient the signal. What once required conscious override becomes, over time, something closer to automatic. Discipline isn't born, it's built, one decision at a time. And as you rest now, your body is doing the work of repair and growth that it can only do when you sleep. Discipline brought you here. Recovery does the rest. Let every muscle soften, every joint loosen, every breath deepen. You've earned this. Discipline is quiet strength. Discipline holds me steady. Discipline shapes my body and my mind. There's a moment in every long-term practice when something shifts. The thing you do every day stops being a task on a list. It becomes part of who you are. That's the threshold between discipline and habit, and crossing it is extraordinary. For me, tracking became that habit. I tracked everything: calories consumed, macros split, training volume, daily steps, hours of sleep, water intake, sodium levels, weekly measurements. I had spreadsheets that documented years of data. I could look back and see exactly what I ate in the week before any given show, and exactly how my body responded. In the early years, this was incredibly useful. I was learning. Every data point was a lesson. The tracking built the knowledge. But at some point, and this is subtle, and it took me a long time to see it, the tracking stopped serving me. I started serving the tracking. I would feel genuine anxiety if I hadn't logged a meal, not because the unlogged meal was a problem, but because the gap in the data felt intolerable. I would feel like the day wasn't real unless it was recorded. The habit had become compulsive, and compulsion is a different thing entirely from discipline. I recognized the same pattern in my career, what I called drive, working late, saying yes to every project, chasing every promotion, was really if I'm honest, a habit of proving myself that had outlived its usefulness. In bodybuilding, you control almost everything. In a corporate environment, outcomes depend on factors well outside your control: politics, personalities, timing, luck. Applying a bodybuilding mentality to a work environment is a fast road to burnout. And I burned out, not dramatically, quietly, the kind of burnout that looks like high performance from the outside and feels like emptiness from the inside. The research on habit formation, particularly James Clear's work popularized in Atomic Habits, distinguishes between identity-based habits and outcome-based habits. Outcome-based habits are built around a goal: lose 20 pounds, run a marathon. Identity-based habits are built around who you want to become. I am someone who moves every day. I am someone who sleeps well. Identity-based habits are more durable because when the goal is achieved or fails to be achieved, the habit has nowhere to go. But when the habit is tied to identity, it self-sustains. Ask yourself not just what you want to do, but who you want to be. And then ask whether your current habits serve that person. Tonight, you're building a new habit, the habit of rest, the habit of letting the body do what it's designed to do. Each time you return to this space, this quiet, this intentional surrender to sleep, you're reinforcing a pathway, a habit of recovery, a habit of restoration. Feel the body growing heavier, more at ease, more willing to let go. Habits are rhythm. Habits are consistency. My habits serve my growth. I want to say something about passion that might be uncomfortable. You can't manufacture it. You can't find it by reading about it. You can't logic your way into it. Passion is discovered through action, and it usually surprises you. I did not expect to fall in love with bodybuilding. I was a runner. I was built lean, long, efficient, a runner's body. The idea of spending hours each week in a gym, lifting weights in a culture I didn't understand, wearing posing trunks on a stage under lights. None of that was in my vision of myself. But something happened when I started competing that I couldn't have predicted. I found that bodybuilding is, at its core, one of the most honest pursuits I've ever encountered. The scoreboard doesn't lie. You either put in the work or you don't. Every meal matters. Every session counts. Every night of quality sleep, or lack of it, shows up in your physique over time. There is nowhere to hide, and there is no glass ceiling. You can always make progress. You can always improve. The body is not a fixed thing. It's a project that never ends. And it's solitary in the best way, not lonely, solitary. The hours in the gym became hours of thinking, of processing, of learning who I was under pressure. You develop a relationship with yourself in that kind of sustained practice that is difficult to find anywhere else. I also, and I say this with full awareness of how it sounds, found freedom in being different. Most people don't do this. Most people find the idea of what bodybuilders do somewhere between impressive and insane. I'm fine with that. There's something quietly radical about committing to an extreme practice in a world that defaults to comfort. Why be ordinary when extraordinary is available to you? If you haven't found your passion yet, your non-negotiable, unreasonable, slightly embarrassing to explain thing, that's okay. But I'd encourage you to stop waiting for it to announce itself. Try things. Commit to things longer than feels comfortable. Passion rarely arrives in the first week. Sometimes it arrives after a year of showing up and not yet knowing why. Whatever it is that lights you up, let that feeling be here with you now. Let it warm the edges of your mind as sleep begins to come. You don't have to do anything with it tonight. Just feel it. Let it remind you that you are someone with something to give, something to pursue, something worth waking up for. Passion burns quietly. Passion fuels my journey. Passion makes me extraordinary. The philosopher Arthur Brooks, and I think about his work often, talks about happiness as something that has to be actively constructed, not pursued, constructed, like a building. He describes 3 foundational elements: enjoyment, which comes from connection and shared experience; satisfaction, which comes from effort and achievement; and meaning, which comes from purpose, from feeling that what you do matters beyond yourself. Of the three, meaning is the most durable. Enjoyment is fleeting. Satisfaction is conditional. But meaning, purpose, has a kind of weight to it that sustains through difficulty. Here's the distinction I've come to. Passion is about what you love. Purpose is about why it matters. I am passionate about natural bodybuilding. That's mine. It feeds me. But purpose is when that passion goes into service of something larger than the next show, the next PR, the next measurement. That's why I started this channel. For a decade, I suffered from insomnia. It was a direct consequence of competition prep. To achieve the body fat percentages required to be competitive, you have to eat in a significant calorie deficit for extended periods. Very low body fat disrupts sleep. The body, perceiving a kind of starvation state, keeps you alert and food-seeking at night. It's a miserable experience. In that decade of bad sleep, I tried everything. I found countless SleepAid videos online, and I want to be honest about what most of them are. They're either recordings of someone speaking slowly over ambient music with no real content, or they're making promises that science does not support. Burning fat while you sleep effortlessly, manifesting muscle without training. I fell for some of these more than once, which is its own kind of embarrassing. What I couldn't find was something that treated me as an intelligent adult who wanted real information alongside the sleep support. Something grounded in evidence, something honest. I am also, in this chapter of my life, the primary carer for my parents, both in their 80s, and watching them age, watching what happens to a body and a mind that hasn't been maintained, has clarified something for me with extraordinary force. Fitness is not about aesthetics. It was never about aesthetics. Not really. It's about function. It's about being able to carry your groceries, climb your stairs, play with your grandchildren, and live independently in your own home for as long as possible. The research on muscle mass and longevity is unambiguous. Maintaining skeletal muscle through resistance training is one of the most powerful things a person can do to protect their health span. Not just lifespan, but the quality of those years. Falls become more survivable. Recovery from illness becomes faster. Cognitive decline is slowed. The entire trajectory of aging shifts. My purpose now is to take everything I've learned from 20 shows, from a decade of insomnia, from years of studying the research, from watching my parents, and put it in service of people who are trying to do the same thing I am. Build a body and a life that lasts. That's why you're here, and that's why I'm here. And now, the story is told. The lesson is in you. You can let the thinking mind rest. Let the words dissolve like mist. The ideas will settle overnight into something useful. Trust that. All that remains now is the breath, slow and deep, each one carrying you further from the noise of the day. Purpose is meaning. Purpose is direction. Purpose aligns what I do with why I do it. We've moved through all 7 steps tonight, from the first spark of inspiration, through the engine of motivation, through intention and discipline and habits and passion and purpose. And now we let it all go. Not permanently. It will all be there tomorrow. But tonight belongs to sleep. Begin to notice the heaviness in your limbs, not an uncomfortable heaviness, a welcome one, the weight of a body that has worked and now is ready to rest. Starting with your feet, let them soften completely. The soles of your feet, the tops of your feet, your ankles, everything releasing. Feel that softening travel slowly up through your calves, the muscles you've pushed through workouts, through walks, through long days on your feet. They're done for the day. Let them be done. Your knees, your thighs, the large muscles of your legs going quiet. Not tomorrow's legs, tonight's legs at rest. Your hips and lower back, so much tension held here throughout the day. Let each breath create a little more space. Exhale and feel the ground beneath you more fully. Your abdomen, your chest, softening with each breath. The rhythm of your breathing slowing naturally. You're not controlling it anymore. Your body knows how to breathe. Your shoulders dropping slightly, your neck lengthening, your jaw. Check the jaw. Is it held tight? Let it go. Gently. Let the teeth part slightly. Your scalp, your forehead, the skin around your eyes, all of it softening, going quiet. Your mind may still offer thoughts. That's okay. Let them be like clouds moving through a wide sky. You don't need to climb up to them. Just watch them drift. You are safe. You are warm. Your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. Every system in your body knows how to restore itself while you sleep. Your muscles are already beginning to repair. Your nervous system is already down-regulating. Your brain is already beginning to process and consolidate the experiences of the day. You don't have to do anything. Just let it happen. Each breath slower now and deeper. Each exhale a little longer, a little more complete. Drifting